Kenya Kwanza is not able to deal with the problems of Kenyans. They are more interested in showbiz, just like their Jubilee counterparts were when they were still in government as Jubilee. They are continuing with that same showbiz. And this is what Kenyans are saying, it's enough is enough. We are going to now start questioning you, and we are going to call you to order. So if there are still people within Kenya Kwanza who are suffering from what I call the hang-ups of the Moi constitution and the Moi days, they must smell the coffee. We are operating in a totally new, different legal framework, and they must now abide by this constitution. This is not the constitution that Moi used to oppress Kenyans. That constitution has been thrown in the annals of history. It's now in the dustbin of legal development. We will never revert to it. Those investigations, the investigation report can form the basis of an impeachment motion against the president. Because if it is found that indeed there was a threat that he made, then it means that he acted in gross violation of the constitution.
Well, hello, a very good day to you, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Candid Talk here on Herman Manyora's YouTube channel. It's a pleasure to always have you on board. Remember, this is Kenya's most comprehensive political and public governance analysis show. This fine morning, I'm joined by Wakili Wellis Otieno right here at the offices. Wakili, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Finally, we are here.
Yes.
And I'm more than glad to visit you at this particular place here.
We call this the learned corner.
Yes. This is the learned corner.
Yes.
I can see you got their certificate actually showing top 100 litigation lawyers in Kenya in 2023.
That's the voice of the people.
That's the voice of the people.
Yes.
Oh, congratulations, Wakili. Well, let's get it going. And actually, a lot of things are happening in the country as usual, and we want to make our viewers definitely understand the impacts of some of these decisions that the government is making at the end of the day. One thing that actually caused uproar in the recent past is the statements that were made by the president while in Kisii, definitely referring to the sword that has actually caused some sort of jitters among members of the public and even the political class, especially those allied to, as Mio said, saying very well that the president misused, or rather was saying that, okay, for them, they're saying that those words were not actually the right words that should actually come out of somebody or the stature of a president. I wonder what you make of the statements that President William Ruto made in Kisii with regards to the use of the sword.
One thing that you must note is that the connotation of the sword, when the president is being sworn in,
yes,
he is given the constitution and a sword. The constitution is the basic document by which Kenyans have committed to be governed, from which the relationship between the Kenyans amongst themselves and Kenyans with the state are all get their foundation on the constitution. The sword is meant to protect the constitution from mutilation, from abuse, from breaches. It's not a sword that is meant to deal with persons who you disagree with or who hold a contrary opinion from you, because within the constitution we have a comprehensive bill of rights that give people the right to hold contrary opinion, to express themselves, to freedom of conscience, religion. So many rights are granted in the constitution, and including the right of access to justice. And it is well within the rights of any Kenyan to challenge any decision by the government within the judicial system established in the constitution. So President Ruto cannot move around saying that the sword is meant to be cutting off the heads of those who have disagreed with him or have decided to challenge certain decisions of the executive before the courts of law that are again established within the constitution. So that was, in my view, the president misspoke, and he seems to have failed to understand the connotation of why the two instruments that are handed over at the point of inauguration is the constitution and the sword. The sword is for protecting the constitution from attack, and it is not meant to be used to cut off the heads of those who hold contrary views. And in working democracies, or more mature democracies, that kind of talk is the kind of talk that can actually lead to impeachment, because it means he has not fully understood the basic tenets of what he's supposed to do with a sword. And if you have a president brandishing a sword all over all over town to undermine or to cut, as he says, like the sword is not for vegetables, cutting vegetables, to cut off the necks of those he disagrees with, then we have a big problem than we actually have appreciated. That sword is not meant to undermine contrary views. Our democracy can only grow when people are allowed to hold contrary views, they are allowed to express themselves freely, they are allowed to challenge any decision of the president. A Kenyan is even free to challenge the kind of attire that the president wears if he feels that it offends our articles of the Constitution. If he feels, I'm not saying it does, but if anybody feels, they are free to challenge it.
Okay.
And so President Ruto needs to be called to order to stop misspeaking or misinterpreting the connotations of the instruments of government that he was given.
How did you particularly understand those words? Because a section of leaders, especially from the other side, are also saying that people actually misunderstood the president, or rather did not actually put those words into the right context.
The context within which those words were said was that those who are challenging the housing levy in court will see me. And I was given the sword, and that sword was not meant for cutting vegetables. Nothing can be clearer than that kind of a statement. He was actually addressing those who have filed court cases to challenge the housing levy. One of them being Senator Okiya Omtata, who has held this as his baby and has been very vocal and has followed the Constitution to challenge the manner in which that levy is being imposed by Kenya Kwanza. So maybe they're trying to do damage control post facto. But the true set of facts is that at the time of speaking, President Ruto did not mean well with those statements. In fact, if he feels that he was misquoted, then let him come out clearly and tell us what he meant by using the sword and to deal with those who have filed the cases challenging the housing levy. Let him tell us that what was the comparison with the sword not being used to cut vegetables. So who did he intend to cut with that sword, if not vegetables? As Kenyans, we believe the sword was meant for the sole purpose of protecting the Constitution. In fact, in any event, the state should even be supporting some of the indigent litigants who've been challenging the decisions of the executive, because we should be having a comprehensive national legal aid program that is supposed to assist those who are not able to afford legal services, legal fees, to access justice. And some of these cases are being done by people who do not even have what will be required to file a case and to see it through to the conclusion. That is what President Ruto should be saying, that I will offer legal services as a government to those who want to challenge, who cannot afford but desire to challenge any decision of the executive, because that is a right in the Constitution. That is when our democracy will grow.
During the swearing-in ceremony, definitely, the president affirmed that he respects the Constitution, and he said very well that he will be there to make sure that the independence of the judiciary is upheld. Going by the words that he just said recently, do you think that the president is actually doing what he said that particular moment? Is he living by the very words that he affirmed to Kenyans back then?
He has no choice. He must live by the Constitution. Of course, his inner desire is to abrogate the Constitution. That is his inner desire. But he must live by the Constitution. And Kenyans will make him live and abide by the Constitution. That is because he came to office by virtue of the Constitution. He didn't come into office because there were guns that were firing all over the country. It's not that he didn't assume office as a result of a coup. He came to office because the Constitution gives Kenyans a right to vote for their president. And once you assume office by virtue of the Constitution, you have no choice but to abide by the dictates of that Constitution when you are governing. If his inner desire is to arrogate the Constitution and move away from it, then let him surrender from the Constitution. He can now pursue power using the alternative means that maybe to him suit his purposes. But some of his conduct, I will not say that wholesomely he's disobeyed the Constitution. He's largely abided by the Constitution. But of course you are seeing the ugly tentacles that are now finding the Constitution to be uncomfortable. Hence the kind of statements that you hear, that maybe we are holding back from what we want to do because of the vibrancy of our Constitution and the rights it gives people. If you recall, even C.S. Murkomen, when he appeared on TV, he spoke almost in similar terms that we are being held back by those who are going to court, as if going to court is a problem, as if people challenging decisions of the executive in court is a problem. So it seems that once they've assumed office, they are now finding it uncomfortable to live by the constitution. But unfortunately, they will have to abide by it. They'll have to live by it. They have no other choice. If they try to pursue the extra constitutional means, it has its limits. There's only how far you can go as a dictator in Kenya, especially if you came in through the constitution. The constitution will bring you back to order, and the people of Kenya will hold you to account and bring you back to order.
Do those statements by the president and the head of state amount to any sort of interference with the independence of the judiciary?
Of course, to an extent, not interfering with the constitution, but to an extent, those statements can have the impact of intimidating a litigant or a judicial officer who is hearing some of these cases. So yes, it does actually has an impact on the quality of justice that Kenyans are going to access.
Okay. A section of Kenyans are also alluding to the fact that maybe people will be going back to the Moi era and such kind of stuff. I've had those statements being mentioned. Did those things used to happen back then?
Of course, during the Moi era, the constitution was subservient to the state. Moi was an autocrat, so to speak.
Okay.
He didn't believe in the constitution which made him a president. But also you must understand that that constitution was very permissive. It accommodated so many of the things that Moi did. Within the laws that we had at that time, there was even a time when detention or trial was permissible. There was a time when you could only belong to one political party, which was KANU. So Moi was operating in a different legal framework. We are now operating in a more robust legal framework that is very aggressive and pro-rights, that is meant to hold government to account. So if there are still people within Kenya Kwanza who are suffering from what I call the hang-ups of the Moi constitution, the Moi days, they must smell the coffee. We are operating in a totally new, different legal framework, and they must now abide by this constitution. This is not the constitution that Moi used to oppress Kenyans. That constitution has been thrown in the annals of history. It's now in the dustbin of legal development. We will never revert to it. We are going to live by the constitution as robustly articulated and enacted by the people of Kenya, who gave unto themselves this constitution to govern how they are going to relate with themselves and how they are going to relate with their government. So anybody who is in government must know that the basic document of relationship between the people and that government is the constitution, whether you like it or not. So President Ruto and his Kenya Kwanza must find accommodation in the constitution as it is. They must order themselves within the rubric of the constitution. Anything else, in my view, is wishful thinking.
Okay. This statement by the president did not actually go well with the Busia Senator Okiya Mtata, and he decided to actually record a statement with the police. What do you make of how the police handled the honorable senator with all these statements?
Of course, no policeman wants to record a statement in which you will require the president to appear before you to give a statement. Because once they lodge, the Senator Mtata lodges a report and gives his statement, an investigator will have an onus to go and look for the person against whom the complaint is made to give his part of the statement in rebuttal to what the senator said. So seeing the police avoiding recording that complaint by Senator Mtata is, in a way, in my view, their attempt to avoid a scenario where they will be required to also take the statement of the president in response to the complaint lodged by the senator. So they are all running away. They are trying to avoid the elephant in the room. But black and white, Senator Mtata rightfully so feels threatened and intimidated by the kind of statements that were made by the president. And this is not a statement that is casually made in a local bar. This is a statement made on a public platform in the presence of so many other Kenyans, witnesses, captured in media, and specifically talking about those who are going to court to challenge the housing levy. And Senator Mtata finds himself right and squarely within the target of that statement. And his statement needs to be recorded. And if need to be investigations conducted, even if we need to set up a special investigator to do the investigation on this complaint and give a report, whether indeed the statements targeted Senator Mtata and those who have challenged the housing levy in court, and if there may be any other action that arises from the statement that was made.
Okay. But of course, that kind of in between Senator Okiya Mtata and the police therein, I understand that he was sent to the crime scene that is in Kisii where the president spoke. But at the same time, this raises a lot of actual legal questions here. In one, of course, you've said here that the police were not actually right to deny him that. Does he have any other option as a senator? And then secondly, it also raises this question. In case that statement is recorded, can the president then be called and charged in a court of law?
No, it can be investigated. And investigations don't have to conclude even now, or arraignment doesn't have to be done now. If the investigations find that it's culpable, those investigations, the investigation report can form the basis of an impeachment motion against the president. Because if it is found that indeed there was a threat that he made, then it means that he acted in gross violation of the Constitution. And that can be a ground for impeachment.
Okay.
And post facto, after he leaves office, the president only enjoys immunity when he's still holding office. But after he leaves office, that can form the basis of a criminal charge against him. But when he's still holding office, that investigation can lead to an impeachment motion against him to be tabled before the Senate and passed by the Senate and the National Assembly. Yes.
Right now you're saying that the president is immune to those kind of charges.
Criminal charges cannot be brought against him while he's still in office. But once he's impeached, post-impeachment, he can actually be charged in court.
What does this then now tell you about the kind of leadership and governance that we are actually witnessing right now with regards to that, such kind of statements being made by the head of state?
Of course, for me, it just demonstrates the underbelly of Kenya Kwanza as a failing regime and a failed regime. It is failing regime because now they are not addressing the issues. They are now going to threats and intimidation. If Kenya Kwanza was firmly addressing the issues of Kenyans, even some of these litigations that keep being taken to court will not be there. Because housing levy, the basic parameter within which it is taken to court is the question of public participation, the discriminatory aspects of it. And people are asking the courts, can you give us a finding on these decisions that have been made by Kenya Kwanza? So it is a wobbling administration that does not have any basic understanding of the Constitution, does not have any economic plan, is not able to address the problems that are facing Kenyans, is not offering Kenyans a tangible economic pathway to prosperity. In any event, all their decisions are meant to undermine the economic well-being of Kenyans. And Kenyans are right to challenge those economic policies and plans in their courts, as they are doing. Because the housing levy, in its full implementation, you are being told that there will be houses for everybody. The other day, the president was saying that if you go to Mukuru, it looks like Europe. I took my time to go to Mukuru, Panjenga slums. If that is Europe, then I don't want that Europe. They are only putting up houses which don't even add up to 2,000 housing units. And the kind of structure that they have put up are some ugly, long-lying buildings that cannot even accommodate the entire population, even a quarter population of Mukuru slums. But if you look at the cost of the project and the impact on the people, it doesn't make sense. So Kenya Kwanza is not able to deal with the problems of Kenyans. They are more interested in showbiz, just like their Jubilee counterparts were when they were still in government as Jubilee. They are continuing that same showbiz. And this is what Kenyans are saying, it's enough is enough. We are going to now start questioning you, and we are going to call you to order. Early enough. They will not wait for the 10 years like they did with Jubilee. And we are now living the consequences of the failed Jubilee that has now mutated into Kenya Kwanza.
Kenyans need services. The government has a plan, as it has said. What then happens when there is a conflict between the government's plan and policies and the law?
You see, the government must organize itself within the Constitution and the law. You cannot say that my plan can only be implemented if it is planned outside the law. Then that plan is a bad plan. Forget about it. Because remember, government is a trust. Government exists as a trust that is meant to represent the interests of the people. Now, if that government plan is not in consonance with the people's desires or with the laws that the people have enacted, then abandon that plan. You're no longer serving the interest of Kenyans. You're now serving your own interest. And Kenyans have a right to reject that kind of plan. So any right-thinking government must organize itself within the laws of the Republic of Kenya, because it's within those laws that Kenyans have expressed their interests and their desires. So anything that you're planning that is outside the law, then forget about it. It means Kenyans don't want it.
Well and good, ladies and gentlemen, that is it from Wakili Willis Otieno here on the kind of statements that the president made while in Kisii, describing actually what he understands as the purpose of the sword that he was given during that period when he was being sworn in. Well, you may tell us what you think about those kind of statements that were made by the president. Weigh in on this conversation, and definitely we will sample some of these comments and we will all actually go through them. You can actually also tell us what you want us to talk about next year with Wakili Willis Otieno, who is always part of this family. And I want to wish you happy holidays. Of course, we want to stop this conversation at this particular moment, but please, if at all you're watching us for the first time, please do not fail to subscribe to our channel here. Merry Christmas and have a very happy and prosperous year 2024. Thank you for watching. My name is Evans Okenyi.